Okay, so here we are, argumentative essay. So this is not the last time you're going to express your opinion, but this is the most focused argument that you're going to make this semester. So let's talk a little bit about this assignment. First of all, just take a look at the assignment sheet to know the requirements, the basic requirements of this essay. I'm not going to cover everything in this video, but one thing I will talk about a little bit is topic and subject matter. So when it comes to writing an argumentative essay, or just having any kind of an argument, first you must know that there is an argument out there that you can insert yourself within. And so what this means is that you're going to need to look around you and to think about topics that you have an opinion on and you would like to argue one way or the other. Now, one of the requirements of this essay, just to rein people in. And believe me, I have had to do this because I'll get, a lot of, if I don't give you some parameters, and I know it may surprise you as you listen to this, but I'll get the weirdest essays. And so, if I don't say don't write about aliens, people will write about aliens and all these other things. So I have to kind of rein you in a little bit. But I am giving you, this is your choice. And the only way I do rein you in is there is a list on the assignment sheet that says don't argue about these subjects. So take a look at that. It does change each year, or sometimes it changes, after a few years. But I try to keep people from writing about, the same issues over and over again. I will say one of the things that I do require in this essay is for you to use your textbook. The textbook has an enormous amount of arguments already in it. There's a lot of really good essays that you can use, and you're required to use at least 2 essays as sources in this assignment. So that means you will have to either argue one of those subjects, or you will creatively be able to use the reading in a way that it doesn't distract from your argument and that it somehow is useful in your argument. So I'm not saying that you have to argue for or against the things that are in the textbook, but I am saying that as you use 2 sources, they do need to apply in some way to the argument. If you have questions about that, feel free to email me. I'm always happy to help. Now, having said this, let's talk a little bit about argument. One of the things that we need to think about when it comes to arguing is what we would consider the point of contention. And so in any argument, you're going to generally have 2 sides. Now, this is not always true, but it is typically true that there is an argument and this side says this and this other side says this, okay? And typically you're going to say, this is the side that's right, this is the side that's wrong, and I can prove it. Let me tell you why. And you're going to use the same basic format that we've used all semester, the same essay format to do this. Your thesis statement in this case will be more argumentative because it's going to state a specific stance on a specific argument. Again, we won't be using first person in this essay because that would weaken our argument. Now, there are times, and I'll give you this caveat, there are times when a first person story may help your essay. These would usually only be if you're telling your own personal story, and that's typically not going to help you in an argument. I know that might sound strange. It may sound a little weird, but generally, people are not swayed very much by your own personal story. Unless maybe you put it in your introduction to kind of introduce the topic. But generally, you cannot necessarily say, this is my experience, therefore this is true, and another person believe it. You're going to have to give your audience reasons to believe it. Now, this can be done using what we call Aristotle's 3 appeals. And I will have videos uploaded that cover Aristotle's 3 appeals. But essentially, you're going to try to use logic and say, I need to have a logical explanation for why my side is right. You're going to want to think about the fact that your reader is a human being, so he or she has emotions. And so your readers will say, your readers will be swayed by their own emotions. You're also going to need to think about the fact that you have to have a good relationship with your reader. Now, how do I do that? How do I have a good relationship with my reader if I don't know who they all are? I don't know these people. The way to do that is to understand your argument. You have to understand who it is you're arguing to. And in the case of an argument, you're not going to, what they would consider, preaching to the choir. We're not going to preach to the people that will already believe us, because that is not the purpose of an argument. An argument, the whole purpose of it is to convince someone who does not already agree with you of whatever your thesis statement is. So if I were to argue that Vincennes University needs to build a water park, I'm not going to, the image of my audience will not be the people who already think that. My audience are going to be the people who say, no, that's not something that I already believe. Either it's going to be, and I need to think, there are two groups that I'm going to think about. There's a group out there that has never heard this argument, and they just need to be informed, and then they can start to make a decision. There's also a group out there that they have heard of this argument, and they've already taken a position that's different than my own. So I need to think about, how am I going to sway that audience? If I just write an essay that is a complaint about something, or that just talks about things that people who already agree with me, yeah, they would probably agree with what I had to say. But but people who disagree with me, you know, I don't know. Are they going to agree with it? Well, I need to focus on that audience, and that is the key to your grade, really, when it comes to argumentation. You really do need to think about, who is it out there that disagrees with my position? And how can I make those people agree with me? And here's the thing. A lot of times we fall into the trap of thinking people that disagree with me are just a bunch of jerks, and they're dumb, and they'll never, you know, that's why they disagree with me, is because they're dumb. You can't do that, okay? Yes, I'm sure, you know, there is a percentage of your audience that will never listen to you. They're just stuck in their ways, and they're not going to change their mind. That's not who we're writing to. That audience, they're not going to listen, so okay, that's maybe not the audience we're writing to. We're writing to the audience who can be swayed. This audience is a group of reasonable people. There are people who they've chosen to take a side on this issue, or they've not chosen to take a side on this issue, but either way, they're not just doing it out of stupidity or out of dishonesty or because they're bad people. They've taken another side because they were convinced by other reasons, by certain information that you need to be aware of. You need to understand, why is it that this audience believes what they believe? And how can I overcome that? Because if I don't address it, then they'll say, well, that's a nice argument you have there, but you haven't stated anything about this whatever little topic. And that's why when we structure this essay, we're going to structure it. Of course, we're using, you know, the standard introduction, conclusion, you know, and in the middle you've got the body of your essay. But when you structure an argument, you generally are going to have three portions. And I want to make it clear, this is not saying that you have three. It's not saying you have three paragraphs. This is three portions of your essay. A good argument is going to provide some context. Okay, and your context portion should be rather objective. You don't want to get into painting the other side as bad people, or you don't want to start off and it's obvious, oh, this person is not a very open-minded person. This person is just stuck in his or her old, you know, ways. In your context portion, you want to provide objective information that allows your reader, especially if your reader doesn't already know about this topic, you want to allow your reader to say, oh, okay, I think I understand this issue now. You also don't want to turn off a reader who has an opinion other than your own. If you tell a story and it's like, nah, that's not how it is, and that's how the reader, you know, the other side, they're saying, that's not accurate, you've already lost the argument because the reader doesn't trust you anymore. So in the first portion of an argument, we typically want to provide context. And generally, we want it to be context that everyone can agree with. Hey, this is why we're talking about this issue. This is how this issue came to be. And that is because we want to establish credibility in the reader's eyes. And we also need to educate some of our readers because they've not heard of this issue and they're not very well educated on the topic yet. So they have to know about the topic in order to agree with you. And if they disagree with you, they need to say, well, okay, this person at least understands the issue. I'm not maybe it's a trustworthy person because the person really did provide some good context. Typically, you're going to have a few paragraphs that would cover context. Then, the next portion is typically the actual argument. And this is where you provide reasons for your side to be right. This is where you provide information, some research. This is really where you win the argument, okay? Again, you want to make sure you're not being abrasive. Your tone needs to be respectful, but you're using a third-person point of view, and you're saying, this is how it is. This is another reason why this thesis statement that I had up here is true, and you're providing evidence. The last job you're going to do is overcoming the objection that you know your audience has. And that's what we call the refutation. Okay? We call it the refutation. We will refute an objection that the audience has. So we're going to overcome an objection. So for instance, maybe I might say, there are many people who believe that Vincent's University should not build a water park because it will be too expensive. Okay, that's a reasonable objection. I have to predict a reasonable objection, or I'll have to know the audience's point of view well enough to say, okay, the other side says this. And then I need to be able to overcome it, or at least get around it. So for instance, I might say, okay, some people might believe that Vincent's University should not build a water park because it'll be too expensive. However, one thing that they're not taking into account is that there are significant federal grants and that the revenue brought in from the water park will easily cover the price of building it. Okay, so I would have to prove that, and I'm just coming up with this just to give you an example. I would have to prove it with some kind of facts and figures. I can't just say, oh no, it's not a good objection because it'll totally pay for itself. I have to actually prove it. But that's what I'm talking about doing. You're overcoming their objection. The other thing you might have to do, if you can't absolutely overcome the objection, you may do this. You might say, some people may claim that Vincent's University should not build a water park because it will be too expensive. And to some degree, they're right. Oh my God, okay, so you're giving the audience some credit. You're like, to some degree, they're right. It will not be something that we can pay off immediately, and there are no federal grants to cover this. However, right, this is the part where I'm overcoming it or I'm getting around it. However, the added benefit of having a water park would add to the culture of the students. It would most likely bring more students. Now, again, I have to prove that. I would have to show that somewhere there's a place, a university that has a water park, and they're getting all these students signing up, and it's because of the water park. I would have to show evidence, but I either absolutely prove them wrong, or I get around their argument in a way that their objection is still not strong enough to say that my thesis statement is wrong. I'm still saying, okay, to some degree you're right, however, this is how I'm still more right than you are. Does that make sense? Hopefully it makes sense. I can't hear you. Listen to it again. Listen to this whole thing again if you're lost. If you still have questions, again, give me an email. I'd be happy to talk to you. Your conclusion, like we've talked about before, is generally going to be a reflection of the introduction, and it's going to never state any new information. The length requirement of your essay does not include the works cited page. You're going to have a significant amount of works cited, and you're going to cite things within the essay, and of course your readings are going to cover how to do that. If you don't know how to cite appropriately, this is pretty late in the semester to learn, but learn. Now's whenever the points are really heavy. So use your writer's handbook, use like Purdue OWL. If you just Google Purdue OWL, there's an enormous amount of information on how to cite things in MLA. So we're using MLA. Make sure you're using that appropriately, and good luck. Good luck with this.